Welcome to Leading the Follower with your host, Rebecca Benston. Good morning and happy Friday. I have made it back once again, but I am still struggling with trying not to lose my voice. So I'm probably just going to do a shorter podcast like I normally do. I just wanted to check in and see how everyone's week went and talk a little bit about some things that went on this week. Just really briefly. I'll probably get into more detail on the next podcast, simply to give myself a chance to rest over the weekend. But I just want to remind you that if you're looking for good books for inspirational, motivational, and educational materials to empower yourself and others, we have lots of great books, lots of good children's stories, and resources for adults, ministry type resources, things for small groups, that kind of thing, in the Higher Ground Books and Media shop. All you have to do is go to our website at highergroundbooksandmedia.com/shop. And you can check out our selections over there and grab a few titles to add to your collection. And we very much appreciate the support. But let's get right into it. As you know, or you may know from listening, I'm a Christian, and I am not necessarily someone who is very staunch, I guess. I'm not sure what the word would be, but I tend to go by what I feel God is telling me is right at any given moment. I tend to really be tuned into what He tells me in prayer time, and just what I've learned and what I've used discernment to figure out which way is right, which way is wrong. And I figure the best way to interact with others from that perspective is each person has their own relationship with God, and they hear from Him on their terms in the language that they can understand, and it is based on their experiences and what He tells them in their personal time with Him. And I also feel very strongly that God created us with lots of wonderful traits, one of which is a sense of humor. I use humor a lot to get through life's little crazy things. And if it weren't for being able to laugh at some things, I would probably not be able to get through the day a lot of the time. So earlier this week, I posted something that I had seen in another group that I belong to on Facebook, and it had to do with just different words you can use for curse words or whatever. And being someone who has been known to throw around a few good curse words, um, not good, I guess, a few of the bad ones, the really bad ones, um, I can appreciate a nice euphemism for this or that that's a little less offensive to the ears of people who might be listening, so that if you are frustrated or angry, you can kind of throw it out there and you just sound silly instead of sounding vulgar. And that really is the point of it. It's just really considering who's around you and why. It's kind of a reflexive language thing. People cuss. That's just plain and simple. If you don't, well, God bless you. It's great that you can be so wholesome in your speech, and it's great that you can always be even tempered, and nothing ever disrupts you to the point where you let out some sort of a word that might be deemed inappropriate. I mean, that takes a lot of self-control, a lot of restraint, and I'm not perfect, so I don't have that. I don't have the ability to restrain myself at all times and not say the wrong thing. That's just how God has made me. God understands what He put into me. He understands what comes out of me, and and I talk to Him on a regular basis to see how I can improve, and that really is nobody else's business. Um, so when I saw this little list on there, I thought it was funny, and I shared it on my Facebook, and I put a little explanation with it about how, I have a terrible temper, and I admit that freely. And that's one of the things that I think is good about me, is that I am not afraid to admit my flaws. I have many of them, and I'm not afraid to share what's wrong with me so that I can help others feel better about the things they think are wrong with them. Because it's not a matter of being better than anyone. It's not a matter of points for this behavior or that behavior. That's not how God works. God knows your heart, and He knows that sometimes your heart is buried under a lot of ugly stuff, and it's a reaction, a response to the world that maybe you're not quite strong enough um, to fight back with anything else at that time. He understands how our growth works. He understands how our walk works better than anybody. And for someone to stand outside that and judge us based on what they think is right for them is just wrong. And I think, quite frankly, I think God looks down on that more than He does on people who are a little rough around the edges. So, but I posted this and I got a lot of funny responses. A lot of people laughed and a lot of people really got the joke. But I had one lady that I'm not, like, I wasn't extremely close to. I don't even know how she ended up on my friends list. I have a lot of those. And right off the bat, she said she thought it was offensive to God, and that she typically didn't curse in front of other people except occasionally to her husband. And but she says it's something that she wants to stop because God hears everything. And I said, yeah, and that He knows and He forgives us for our transgressions. He knows that we are not perfect. He made us. He knows all of our flaws, and He works with us to deal with the big ones and to help us strengthen ourselves so that those fall away eventually. But while we're here on earth, I don't think any of us are going to be necessarily perfect. But then she comes back and she spits out, like, I don't know, several Bible verses at me, as though to justify saying that it's wrong to encourage people to curse. Well, I wasn't encouraging people to use cuss words or this and that. I was telling people, if this is something you do, take heart. There is a way to frame it a little differently and make it less abrasive for those around you if you're worried about how you sound. And really, if you're worried about how you sound when you're saying words that people say you shouldn't say, then that's kind of the first step in, cleaning that up and letting that behavior fall to the wayside so that it's not something you pick up each and every day and use as the way you interact with people. But, she just kind of, in my opinion, that was offensive, just kind of crapped all over the whole, you know, fun part of the post. And I thought, what must it be like to live in that way where you're constantly looking for what's wrong with people and you can't understand the concept of grace, you can't understand how how it works, that you are not God but that He is, and that it is up to Him and His judgment to determine when someone has done something that is offensive or when someone's behavior is not something that He will accept in His kingdom. What must it be like to take that authority on yourself and think that you can tell people that they're not good people because they dropped an F-bomb over here one day, and maybe they are a little more colorful in their language than you are. And um, I think that's probably worse than just about anything else that most people do. Most of us are struggling to get through each day and be nice to ourselves, much less to others. And it's very difficult sometimes to have a heart that is free of anger and frustration when there's so much going on around us that is out of our control and that feels like nobody has your best interests in mind or at heart. So, if the worst thing that you do is, throw a few cuss words around here and there to to make yourself feel like you had a little bit of power in that moment, um, that's probably not something that God is going to condemn you for. Now, I don't speak for God. I don't know. I know that God is very serious about you know being good people and presenting ourselves in a certain way, and and I think we've gotten so far away from that in our society and our culture that we don't often think that all of the little things do add up to the big, bad, ugly things. But I think right now, I think that the priority should really be attacking those big, ugly things. And, maybe once the ugliness is eradicated from this world and taken off the table and not in front of us all the time, um, maybe once we don't have to worry about our kids going out, you know, to go from point A to point B, maybe when it's safe for them to do that without us worrying that someone's going to snatch them up and do horrible things to them or kill them, maybe maybe we will feel a little more wholesome in our hearts and minds. And we won't feel like we have to be so vigilant and so angry and frustrated all the time. I really think that the bigger picture is not nitpicking each other to death over stupid things. Excuse me. Like things like whether or not we wear too much makeup, or whether or not we dye our hair, or we have tattoos or piercings or things like that. I think that we need to take the big transgressions a little more seriously. And yes, I know everybody says that one sin is just as bad as another. But I beg to differ. I think that, and I'll probably get a lot of pushback on this, but I think that if you stand a murderer up in front of someone whose only transgression is that maybe they dropped an F bomb or two in conversation, I really don't think that God's going to look too favorably on someone that kills someone else over the person who, you know, uses profanity here and there. I just don't see that. God is pretty rational, and that's not a rational thing. So, and I'm sure that He will deal with me in my personal prayer time if that is a wrong assumption. But I like to think that there is sort of a gradient on that, and that there's a place for those who hurt kids, there's a place for those who hurt the poor, the elderly, the sick, the people who victimize others, greedy people, people who constantly take advantage of others, people who hurt animals, that kind of thing. There's so much um, that's tied up in all of the evil that's out there. And for us to think that a few cuss words are what God is going to be focused on in these end days is really, wow. I don't even understand the rationalization on that one. And maybe that's why it's so easy for people to stick their head in the sand and not see all of the bad things that are going on, or not acknowledge that those really, really bad things are what's tearing us apart, and they're what it is really at the root of people being so frustrated that they can't have a clean, wholesome vocabulary. Um, so I don't know. I guess it depends on, which garbage is less offensive to you to pick up when it's in your path. So um, I'd have to frame it that way. When I go through my taking the trash out and, gathering it up in my house, am I least offended by the garbage that's in my bathroom trash can, or my bedroom trash can, or my office trash can, or my kitchen trash can? I mean, there's all different kinds of things in those cans, but it's all garbage. I think that's a good analogy. Um, but yet, I'm not nearly as worried about what I might find in my bedroom trash can or my office trash can as I am maybe in what's in the bathroom or the kitchen. Because, you know, I wouldn't want to get into it, but there's some disgusting things that we throw out. So I don't know. Not that disgusting. I don't want you thinking there's something really weird and monstrous going on in my house. But um, say, for instance, I think the kitchen is probably the most disgusting. Um, when you throw out like food that might have gotten old, or something that got to the back of the refrigerator and you didn't realize it, because you know you're not down at that level all the time and you don't always see what's back there. Um, but that kind of thing, every once in a while, there's something that you'll find that is like, ooh, I need to really get that out of here, and it's in the trash. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And those are the kinds of things that we tend to overlook a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And we get irritated by things that really aren't the root problem of everything else. So, to wrap this up a little bit, because I do have lots of other things I need to do, and I wanted to just make a brief appearance and talk about this. We need to really stop throwing stones at one another for things that we shouldn't be judging each other on anyway. And we need to really take a good hard look at the level of damage that is done by a particular sin. And we need to think about, you know, this person over here. God may forgive them for their transgression, no matter what it is. But do we tolerate someone hurting children, hurting elderly people, hurting the poor, hurting animals? Do we tolerate that stuff in the same way we do the contents of, say, our office trash can? Um, no, we don't. It's offensive. That's the kind of stuff that's rotten in the back of the refrigerator that we get out immediately, so that the smell doesn't, rot our house or whatever. It doesn't make our entire living area unpleasant. It's, some envelopes and stuff like that in your office trash can. That's not going to bother you. That can stay there for a week or so without being emptied and taken out and gotten rid of. But there are things that need to be taken out immediately. There are things that need to be dealt with immediately. And those things are, um, what is festering on the inside. Those are the things that are really um, causing the breakdown, and the things that can really weaken and sicken the entire body. So let's not spend our time picking on people who don't use the language we want them to use, or who don't look the way we want them to look. or say the words we want them to say, and, listen to music we would prefer they listen to. Let's let's focus on dealing with the people who are stealing from the poor, hurting the weak, and taking advantage of those less fortunate, and just mainly doing everything they can to hurt others to make themselves feel better. That's where we need to be focused, and that's where we need to give our lectures. And if you're going to spew scripture at someone, get out your Bible when you see that, and send those people a letter, and send those people a nice critical post instead of looking the other way. Then maybe I will take you seriously of what I'm saying, because I figure if I'm doing this wrong, God will deal with me. And I know that he will deal with other people as well. But I try to be very careful where I point that finger. And I know that it is my job as a Christian to point out when behaviors are not necessarily good for us. But it's also my job as a Christian to show grace and compassion where it's needed, and to have the discernment to understand the difference between what is a true transgression and what is simply a human weakness or thorn in someone's side that they need help with. So, I guess with that said, I've probably said enough today. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy whatever weather you're having. We're having snow, and it's not a lot of fun. But I will I will be back on Monday with something else to talk about. So, thank you for stopping in. Be sure to subscribe, and also go over and subscribe on Higher Ground Books and Media, and on Leading the Follower for regular updates and all the good stuff. Thanks again. God bless. Thanks for stopping by. Be sure to check out our website and blog. The blog is at www.leading-the-follower.com. Thanks, and God bless.